Uh, Hello, Daniela. Do you hear me?
Hi.
Hi.
I need to change my...
Daniela has spent...
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was just changing the translation button.
I would like...
for having me here.
Right, okay. Daniela has spent more than a decade designing and facilitating social impact education around the world. Her learning service approach and motto, learning and community before trying to help them, completely transformed the concept of volunteering abroad. She designed leadership programs at the University of Oxford and served as a lecturer at the Yale School of Management. Her work, Rethinking Social Entrepreneurship Education, led the design of a range of education programs, a tool called Impact Gaps Canvas. Daniela, we would love to hear the beginning of your change-making story, the very first page, if you can recall.
Sure. I would say my entry into social entrepreneurship, though I might not have known the term at the time, was with work I did in Cambodia. So I actually had friends that had biked across Cambodia, and I thought that sounded incredible. And so I planned a trip to do that and invited other people to join me. And at first it was just going to be a fun bike ride. And, but then we decided to use it as a fundraising tool. And my mother was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, I believe in education. And so I went on the website and typed in, I thought build a school. And that was build a school in Cambodia. And there was a website, buildaschoolinCambodia.com or something like that. And we wrote them a note and said, we want to fundraise for you. I had no idea how to decide if an organization was a good organization or a real organization. I'd ask them no questions. I knew nothing about nonprofit management. We just raised a bunch of money and built some schools, funded some schools. And so when I got to Cambodia, I realized that we had this half-empty school with our name on it. And it was next to a completely empty health center with a Belgian guy's name on it. And in part, that was because it was very easy to fundraise for a building, for a thing, because you can send someone a picture and say, look, we did it. Here's your thing. Here's your name. You're done, right? And I could be involved in that, right? Whereas the real change in education that was needed was about supporting teachers. And, teachers were getting paid at the time only about $25 a month if they got paid at all. And the school building cost $60,000 to build this over-engineered, really expensive building, right? So you can see where there was waste and, so through my time in Cambodia, I ended up living there for 6 years. And at first we were building schools and giving away bikes and t-shirts, etc. And then we were teaching English and teaching these foreign skills and ideas of what was needed. And then eventually we finally shifted, really supported a Khmer literacy program, and then supported schools through a program that supported the parent-teacher association, kind of like the local school board, and helped them to know their rights and advocate for when the government wasn't paying for books and maybe it should have, or things like that. So we changed our model along the way. And at the same time, we had a travel company. And the travel company was a volunteer travel company, a voluntourism company, which meant we took wealthy foreigners who didn't know anything about Cambodia, who, like me, when I arrived, thought, oh, it's my responsibility to help. Because in America, I was taught to help that you know, like you had to help, quote unquote, I don't know if you can translate that, quote unquote, poor places, right? But I knew nothing about the language. I knew nothing about the culture. I knew nothing about education. I knew nothing about Cambodian education for sure, right? And yet I had this view as an American that I was supposed to fix it, supposed to help fix it, right? Completely unrealistic and paternalistic, and can cause more harm than good, right? And so at the beginning, we were teaching that with our volunteer travel trips. Come to Cambodia, help, you know, and we would stop school for a day and let people, you know, play with children and teach them English, etc., which is also harmful to schools, harmful to kids, puts kids in danger, right? And so eventually we changed our model, that the nonprofit changed to investing in people instead of giving things away. And the tour company changed from volunteer, save the world, to learn about development. Come here, learn about development, learn that it's complicated, learn that it's not, you know, just throw your money at anything and walk away, right? In order to change the world, you have to change how you live, how you travel, how you give. It's not about writing a check to some organization you don't know anything about. And so eventually we changed our model. It still obviously has flaws, but it's now run by, the nonprofit's run by an amazing Cambodian leader. And then we wrote a book about what we learned, called Learning Service, about rethinking volunteer travel and how we need to reconsider the way that we talk about, sell, and run volunteer abroad programs.
Mert, can you unmute?
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, thank you. I would like to, yeah, Daniela, in the beginning of your changes. So yeah, okay. You mentioned painting a fence that no one needs when talking about effective volunteering. So I would like to put a little bit about needs map. Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah. No, I've read a little bit about your work, but I would like to learn a little bit about it.
No, it's okay. So, like, I mean, I feel very near to, like, needs map provides a space for the individuals and the communities to express what they actually need. So there are no hierarchy between the needs volunteers or the mappers. So the taker who received a tent after an earthquake hits her town today, maybe the giver who sent telescope to a village school next year. So we have many such stories of takers became givers or volunteers and the vice versa, let's say. A volunteer who just entered the platform today has as much say as one of the co-founders even. So as you can imagine, during the pandemic, many givers became takers for the first time. Now I would like to ask you about the new kind of superhero in town, the heropreneur. I know you did field work and conducted interviews with the educators, founders, entrepreneurs, and the students for your report. How can we tackle heropreneurship?
Thank you, Bert. And I love what you're doing with Needs Map, right? Because the end message of the work with learning service was, we can't just go and do something because we assume we know how to solve it. Instead, it should be matching needs with skills. So actual needs with actual, skills or service or support. So That's fabulous. So out of that work that I did in Cambodia, I ended up going to Oxford to do my MBA, and then was teaching and in a number of places. And I realized that we were teaching the same mistakes that I was making in Cambodia. We were teaching people to get on a plane and go help, but we weren't teaching them, how do you understand a problem? How do you learn about a system and a complex challenge, right? And what we were also doing was incentivizing or supporting, celebrating the founder role. Only these entrepreneurs as heroes. And in reality, in order to create change, there's many different roles needed. But if the only money, like at my MBA program when I was a student, and at many of the ones that I'd seen, if you wanted to have a social impact career, the only money or support available to you when you graduated was money to start a new venture, right? And so we are creating this idea of the hero entrepreneur. I call it heropreneur, where the only role that is celebrated, supported, funded in social change was founder, right? And I think what ends up happening when we do that is we only get the very egotistical people who say, I can do this, I can start it, I can change it, right? And all the people who say, wow, this is complex and I'd like to do more, or I'd like to help, but I don't think founder is the right role for me. We oftentimes don't have the tools to support them and celebrate them. So I think it's not the fault. There are many other people like me who just got on a plane and go to help. And partially that was my ego. And partially that was my education teaching me that was okay and giving me awards to do that and stuff, right? So I think we need to rethink who we celebrate, how we celebrate.
Right, it's great. And I would like to explain a little bit. Again, needs map, heropreneur site, let's say, because when I was in college, I was introduced in halk evleri, let's say like a people's house. So they are in a non-hierarchic community center where you volunteer, learn, give and take. So then I had a chance to live in Sweden, where I witnessed the perfectly functioning the collective model. These ideas of collectivity, collective thinking, co-creating led the systematic intervention and the needs map, which is a cooperative itself. I was involved in many NGOs before that, and getting hundreds of requests through them. Instead of playing the lone hero, we became up with a infrastructure in which no person or organization is in the lead. So we are nobody's big sister, big brother, or savior, let's say. The same principle actually applies to art wellness. I mean, for sustainability, we're trying to a culture, a philosophy, rather than creating a brand name after the founder. So what's your approach to systems leadership, Daniela?
Sure, thank you. So I view that systems-led leadership is kind of the way to tackle the problem of heropreneurship. And it sounds like you and Needs Map have already done a lot of that by how you designed the organization. So systems-led leadership, I think, has two parts: systems and leadership. And the systems piece is, as educators, so I usually, I work in the education space. I think the responsibility of educators and of funders because funders are making the choice of what questions they ask in their funding application for nonprofits or investment funding for social investors. If we are only asking questions about competition, like who are your competition? How are you better? How are you going to win at solving this problem? Right? We are asking the wrong questions. If that's what we're asking, if someone's trying to work on a complex social or environmental problem, right? Because nobody can win at solving a very complex problem. We can only contribute, right? So instead of saying, who are your competitors? Why are you better? How can you win, right? We need to ask, how is your work improving the impact of other nodes, so other organizations, people, groups in the system? How is your work improving the impact of others in the system? Because you exist, the whole system is changing faster or connecting better, etc. Right? That is what we need to be asking and thinking about. And if we do that as educators, we need to teach, how do I understand a system? Right? So the impact gaps canvas, I always say it's common sense, but not common practice. And what I mean is it would make sense that people would think in this way if they were really trying to solve a problem, but it's not common practice. People don't usually. And the impact gaps canvas has 3 parts. One part is the first questions I think you would want to ask if you really wanted to change a problem are, what is the problem? Right? What are the numbers? What is it connected to? Who benefits from this problem staying a problem? Because there's always somebody, some people, some groups that benefit from the problem staying a problem, right? And they won't want it to change maybe, right? So what's happening, right? That's the first question we ask. I think there's a problem here. I can see that, you know, students in this school are graduating and they're not getting good jobs, or they don't they're failing the exam or whatever. So there's a problem. But what is the problem? Is it all people? Is it, women are not getting this and men are getting that? Is it people in certain areas are getting better education than others? Is it, what are the numbers? What is the real problem, right? Who's getting trained? What are they getting trained in? What's the curriculum, etc. The other side is who's already trying to solve this, right? If I'm going to try and put effort in, I would think I would also want to know who else is trying to solve this. What are they doing? What's working? What's not working? Where are they doing it? Where are they not doing it, right? So that I can see, then it's the middle piece is the impact gaps. So what's missing that might be possible that can fill the gaps between the need and the current solution efforts, right? So that's the impact gaps canvas is a little tool to think about that. And then we turned it into a competition at Oxford. It's now running at 45 universities around the world. I would love to see a Turkish university there. So if any of you are working at a university, please, reach out and I can connect you to them. There's usually a fee to join, but any university that's joining for the first time, I'm sure we can encourage them to have no fee. But the idea is to create a competition that instead of a business plan competition where you pitch, here's my idea, here's how I'm going to win, you pitch, here's my understanding of the problem and what I don't understand. And, here it's complex. And here's my understanding of what's already being tried. And instead of saying, and there's one thing missing, my venture, you say, here are many opportunities for change. It could be policy, it could be activism, it could be education, it could be a new venture, it can be any number of things. So for me, systems-led leadership is this idea that the system will change even if we take a nap, right? We could have taken a nap from 2019 to today and we wake up, right? oh my gosh, right? We didn't do anything to change the system, right? But this system, every system is, somehow changed. People are working online. People are, no one's traveling. People wear masks in public, right? The whole world has changed, right? And we didn't do that. We didn't work really hard to change the system, right? I've been working so hard on, decreasing carbon from planes, and then I take a nap for 2 years and there's no one flying, right? So the system will change even if we take a nap, right? So systems-led leadership is I look at the system and I try to get a general understanding of it. We can never understand it all, right? And we always will have a bias of our perspective, but I can at least start to ask questions and think about it. And then I can, that's the systems piece, what's happening. And I don't have to do that all the time. I need to do that at the beginning to think about how I want to contribute. And then I need to check in every now and again and say, does my idea for how I want to contribute, is it still needed, right? And then the leadership piece is where you get to look internally and say, who am I in relation to this problem? That's where you get to also put yourself in, what do I like to do, right? What am I good at, etc. There's always going to be so many opportunities to contribute, right? So you don't have to find the right one. You have to find the right one for you or your organization, right? And so I think we have to, as educators, think both about how we teach about systems, because it's often missing, and incentivizing people to understand problems, but then also the leadership piece around self-reflection, etc.
Yeah, thanks again. It's great. And you already answered some questions I will ask, I'm planning to ask. So Daniela, what recommendations do you have for a social impact educators, as support organizations and the private sector representatives, as social entrepreneurs in the room?
Great. Okay, so educators, entrepreneurs, and what was the third one again?
Impact educators, yeah. Support organizations and private sectors. Yeah, and social entrepreneurs, yeah.
Great. So for educators, and I see someone ask for the link. I can put that in a second. For educators, I think it's about how it's not jump in and start to design your new venture, right? Let's teach people how to think about systems. And then also, we don't want to get them married to their idea, right? We have so many different pitch competitions or accelerator programs where in order to apply, you have to apply with your idea. Sometimes those ideas are really bad, right? And we pick them because for some reason we think it might be good, right? But then as the person is designing it, it's actually not filling a real need, or it's, the idea is paternalistic or something, right? We don't want to marry people to their ideas. We want to marry people to the problem they want to solve. So if they pitch with a problem, we want to say, yeah, sure, think about that idea. But if it doesn't feel right, throw it away. And we still want to support you with a different idea, because we want you to be married to your problem. We don't want you to be married to your idea, because then we fund a lot of really bad things just because we started to fund it, right? So that's, I think, for educators. For social entrepreneurs, get on the phone, interview, talk to 5 organizations that are working in the same issue. It might be that they're a government organization. It might be that they're a nonprofit. It might be that they're activists. It doesn't have to be a venture like yours, but learn about their view of what's missing in the system, right? And then you ask yourself, how might my work contribute to their work? Like, how can, because I exist, their work be easier, right? So you can find ways to contribute beyond your little, piece of service or product that you're offering. How might I contribute wider to help supporting to change the system? And for funders, This is where a lot of change needs to happen. And some of it is happening. But look in, if you run a funding program, nonprofit or investment fund, or if you run an accelerator program or something like that, like what questions are you asking? Are you asking anything that shows you that this person or this group really understands the system that they're in? If you're not, start asking those questions. Are you only providing funding and support to startup ventures? Are you providing support for other things in the system, like collective movements or movement building, behavior change, etc.? And then are you creating unnecessary competition in a sector that should be collaborative? How can you fund collaboration instead of competition? How can you pick organizations that are thinking in that way? So you have to change your questions to reflect that way of thinking. Yeah. And I'm gonna put this in here. I'll put the map the system competition there. Yeah. There you go. Oops, I didn't do that.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. I'm sorry. I changed my computer a little bit. Thank you. Thank you for this thought-provoking conversation, Daniela. Thanks for everything. It's great to hear from you, your story and everything. So, Zeynep, we're back at you.
Perfect. Çok teşekkürler Mert, alan tuttuğun için ve bu